Her name was Mara. For 3 years, she was the one place I felt normal. My smile faded. Mara, I said quietly. Why are you checking the locks? She finally looked at me the way you look at someone you're about to hurt. For your own good, she said. I felt it then, that drop in the stomach. That instinct that tells you this moment will divide your life into before and after. For my own good, I repeated. That's not an explanation. That's an excuse. Her jaw tightened. You don't have time for explanations. I stepped closer. Then make time. She shook her head. I can't. Why not? My voice cracked. Why are you acting like someone's coming? She flinched. Just a fraction of a second. But I saw it. My heart started pounding. Mara. Who's coming? Silence filled the room. Thick and heavy. She walked past me and pulled a small envelope from the drawer. She pressed it into my hand like she didn't trust herself to hold it any longer. Don't open this here, she said. I stared at it. What is this? Instructions, she said. And protection. That word again. Protection. Mara, I whispered. Are you in trouble? She didn't answer. Instead, she reached into the cabinet and pulled out an old phone. Not hers. Not mine. One I had never seen before. You'll use this phone only, she said. If someone calls you from an unknown number, don't answer. If anyone asks where you are, don't reply. My hands started shaking. This is insane. No, she said sharply. What's insane is pretending you're invisible. I searched her face. Invisible to who? Her eyes filled, but her voice stayed steady. To people who care about names. I frowned. What does that even mean? She swallowed hard, then said it slowly, carefully. Victoria Langford. Hearing my full name out loud felt wrong. Heavy. Nobody uses my last name, I said. They will, she replied. My mouth went dry. Why? She looked at the door. Then she said the sentence that changed everything. Because your name was supposed to disappear. Before I could ask what that meant, a knock hit the door. 3 sharp knocks. Not friendly. Not unsure. Mara froze. My entire body went cold. Ma'am, a man's voice called from the other side. Confident. Open the door. Mara turned to me, panic finally breaking through her control. You have 2 minutes. She whispered. I grabbed her arm. Come with me. She shook her head violently. No. Why not? Because they're not here for me, she said. They're here for you. Another knock. Harder. Mara, please. She cupped my face, just for a second, like she was memorizing me. I love you, she said. That's why you're leaving. Tears spilled down her face as she pushed the suitcase into my hands. Backstairs, she said. No elevator. What about you? I begged. Her voice broke. I'll slow them down. I shook my head. That's not fair. She smiled, small and devastating. Neither is the truth. She opened the back door and shoved me into the stairwell. Then she closed it. And locked it. I ran down the stairs, my heart slamming against my ribs. At the bottom, I stopped and looked up through the stairwell window. I saw the front door open. I saw 2 men step inside. I saw Mara straighten her shoulders. And then the door closed, leaving me alone in the dark. With a suitcase I didn't pack. A name I didn't understand. And the terrifying realization that the woman who loved me most had just pushed me away. To save my life. I didn't sit down when the door closed behind me. I stayed standing in the stairwell, my back pressed against the cold wall, my ears straining for sounds I didn't want to hear. Footsteps. Voices. My name. Mara. Nothing came. That was worse. Because silence doesn't mean safety. It means control. I forced my legs to move. One step. Then another. Down the stairs. Each footfall felt like a betrayal, like I was choosing myself over everything I'd ever known. At the bottom, the exit sign buzzed faintly, red and angry. I pushed through the door and stepped into the alley. The air was sharp, almost painful to breathe. The city smelled like rain and metal and old secrets. Somewhere nearby, a car alarm chirped and then stopped, like it had remembered it wasn't supposed to draw attention. I pulled my coat tighter around myself. For your own good. The words replayed in my head like a sentence passed down by someone who didn't care if I understood it, only that I obeyed. I walked fast but not fast enough to look suspicious. That's the trick. You don't run unless you're ready to be remembered. Halfway down the block, my phone buzzed. I flinched so hard I nearly dropped it. Unknown number. I stared at the screen until it buzzed again. Then a message appeared. Keep walking. Don't turn around. My chest tightened. I typed back before I could stop myself. Who is this? The reply came almost instantly. Someone who knows why you were asked to leave. My steps slowed despite myself. Asked. I typed. I was fired. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Then. No. You were removed. There's a difference. I swallowed. Where is she? I didn't need to explain who she was. A pause. Safe. For now. Those 3 words hurt more than if they'd said not safe at all. I stopped under a flickering streetlight and leaned against a brick wall, forcing myself to breathe. Why did she do it? I typed. Why push me out like that? The response took longer this time. Because you wouldn't sign. Because you wouldn't stay quiet. Because you didn't realize how dangerous that made you. My stomach dropped. The memory came rushing back. The late nights, the reports, the compliance review everyone wanted rushed through. The document I'd flagged. The signatures that appeared without me. I didn't do anything wrong, I typed. Exactly, the message replied. I laughed under my breath, bitter and shaking. So what now? A new message appeared. Now you follow the instructions she left you. My fingers tightened around the envelope still tucked inside my coat. I hadn't opened it yet. Some part of me had been afraid that once I did, there'd be no going back. But there was no going back anyway. I tore it open. Inside was a folded letter in her handwriting. Clean, controlled, careful in a way that made my throat tighten instantly. And a key. And an address. My hands shook as I unfolded the letter. Mora. If you're reading this, it means they did what I expected. I'm sorry I didn't tell you everything sooner. I didn't know how, without putting you in danger faster than I already had. I closed my eyes for a second. You were never meant to be visible. Not to them. Your work, your objections, your refusal to approve that report. It pulled you into a line of sight that should have stayed closed. My breath caught. They don't remove problems by fixing them. They remove people. I read that line twice. The storage unit is in your name. It always has been. The key will open the first door. What you find there will explain why I couldn't stay silent, and why I couldn't let you stay. Tears blurred the page, but I kept reading. Whatever happens next, remember this. I didn't push you away because you were weak. I pushed you away because you were strong, and they noticed. I folded the letter with trembling hands and looked up at the dark street. The phone buzzed again. You've read it. I didn't bother asking how they knew. Where is the address? I typed. Industrial sector. Storage facility. Unit 214. My chest tightened. Why all the secrecy? The reply came slow and deliberate. Because once you see what's there, you stop being just an employee they can erase. I reached the storage facility just before midnight. Bright lights. Too bright. Cameras everywhere. I stayed across the street, watching. Counting exits. Counting cameras. My instincts were screaming, but my options were limited. The phone buzzed again. Gate code sent. Do not speak to staff. Do not hesitate. The code followed. I crossed the street. The gate slid open smoothly, like it had been waiting for me. Inside, the place smelled like dust and cold metal. The kind of place where things were stored, not lived with. Forgotten, but not destroyed. I found Unit 214. My hand shook as I unlocked it. The door rattled loudly as I rolled it up. Inside were 3 boxes stacked neatly on a folding table. On the top box, written in black marker, Mora. Original records. My knees went weak. I stepped inside and lowered the door behind me, leaving a thin line of light. The first box contained files. Old ones. Employment records. Internal memos. Emails I'd never been copied on. Emails discussing me. Not my performance. My risk. I flipped through page after page. My name highlighted, circled, flagged. Non-compliant. Not flexible. Potential exposure. My phone buzzed. They decided you were a liability the moment you refused to approve false compliance. I swallowed hard. So they fired me. They tried to silence you, the reply corrected. Firing was just the first step. I opened the second box. Photographs. Not personal ones. Surveillance. Me at my desk. Me leaving late. Me meeting someone for coffee. Me handing documents to legal. I backed away, my heart pounding. How long? I typed. A pause. Long enough. The third box was thinner. Inside was a red folder. Stamped. Legal hold. Preliminary. I opened it. The first page made my breath stop. Subject. Fraudulent compliance certification. Associated signatures. Altered. I flipped the page. Proof. Clear, documented proof. Edits made under my credentials while I was offline. Approvals time-stamped while I was asleep. Someone had used my name. My phone buzzed. This is why she told you to leave. My hands clenched. Why bring me here? Why now? The reply came slower. Because a board-level review was triggered today. Because your removal wasn't supposed to be questioned. And because someone on the inside asked one question too many. My throat went dry. Who? 3 dots. Then. Me. I froze. You're here. I typed. Close enough. A chill ran down my spine. Then the final message appeared. Mora, someone is coming. And this time, they're not here to remove you. They're here to ask why your name was erased in the first place. Footsteps echoed outside the unit. Slow. Controlled. Not rushed. A shadow crossed the thin strip of light under the door. And a calm voice, female, unfamiliar, certain, said, "Are you Mora?" The question landed heavier than anything Evelyn had said that afternoon. Because when someone says your name like that, they didn't come by accident. The voice outside the unit didn't rush me. That's how I knew everything had already changed. Are you Mora? Not loud. Not threatening. Not polite either. Certain. Like a fact being confirmed, not a question being asked. I didn't answer. I stayed perfectly still inside the unit, my back pressed against cold metal, my breath shallow enough to hurt. The boxes around me felt suddenly fragile, like they could shatter if I moved wrong. The shadow under the door shifted. A pause. Then the voice again, closer this time. You can open it, she said. If I wanted you gone, you wouldn't be standing. That sentence landed harder than fear. Because fear is noisy. Power is quiet. My phone buzzed in my hand. Open the door. I didn't ask who sent it. I rolled the metal door up slowly. The light outside flooded in, harsh and unforgiving. I squinted, heart hammering, every instinct screaming to brace for impact. A woman stood there alone. Mid-40s. Dark suit. No badge. No visible weapon. Hair pulled back tight, not for style, for efficiency. Her posture wasn't aggressive, but it wasn't relaxed either. She looked like someone who didn't need permission to be anywhere. Her eyes moved over me quickly, not judging, assessing. "Mora," she said again, nodding once. "Good. You're faster than they expected. Who are you?" My voice sounded steadier than I felt. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she glanced behind her down the corridor, checking for witnesses. There were none. "May I come in?" she asked. I hesitated. She smiled faintly, not warm, not cruel. "That wasn't a courtesy," she said. "It was a signal." I stepped aside. She entered the unit and immediately looked at the boxes. Her eyes paused on the marker-written label, Mora. Her expression didn't change, but something behind her eyes sharpened. "You found them," she said. "They were left for me," I replied. She nodded. "That tracks." She turned to face me fully. "My name is Renee Ashford," she said. "I represent the board." The words landed slowly. Not HR. Not legal. Not compliance. The board. I crossed my arms. Not defensive. Grounding. "If you're here for the board," I said carefully, "then you already know why I was removed today." Renee studied me for a beat longer. "I do," she said. "That's why I needed to see you before they finished rewriting the story." My stomach tightened. They already started. "Yes," she agreed calmly. "But they made a mistake." She gestured to the boxes. "They underestimated how thoroughly you documented everything." I let out a short, humorless laugh. "That wasn't strategy. That was survival." Renee's mouth curved slightly. "Often the same thing." She reached into her jacket and pulled out a thin folder. No logos. No labels. Inside were timestamps, access logs, administrative overrides. My chest tightened as I recognized my own credentials, used at hours I wasn't awake. "They used your login to finalize a compliance certification you refused to sign," Renee said. "Then they removed you to prevent questions." I nodded once. I told them it wasn't complete. That parts of it were wrong. "I know," she said. "I read your emails. All of them." I stiffened. "You did?" "Yes," she replied. "Including the ones they thought you deleted." My breath caught. "They didn't know about the local copy," I said quietly. "No," Renee agreed. "They didn't." She closed the folder and met my eyes. "Mora, you weren't removed because you failed. You were removed because you wouldn't go along with something illegal." The word hung heavy in the air. Illegal. Not unethical. Not questionable. Illegal. "And Mara," she continued, "the people who signed off on your removal knew that." My jaw clenched. "Then why are they still in their offices?" Renee's gaze sharpened. "Because until 30 minutes ago," she said, "they thought you'd disappear quietly." I felt something shift in my chest. Not relief. Momentum. "What changed?" I asked. She smiled, not with her mouth, but with her eyes. "You didn't." She stepped past me and looked down the corridor again. Then she pulled out her phone. "Effective immediately," she said into it, voice steady. "A legal hold is in place. All records preserved. No system changes. No personnel actions." A pause. "Yes," she added. "Including hers." She ended the call and slipped the phone back into her pocket. "The next hour is going to be unpleasant for them," she said mildly. I swallowed. "What happens to me?" Renee turned to face me fully. "That depends," she said. "On whether you want your job back. Or something better." I stared at her. Better than a company that tried to erase me? She didn't flinch. "Better than a company," she corrected. "Authority." The word sent a ripple through me. "What kind?" I asked. "The kind that scares people who hide behind process," she replied. The kind that answers directly to the board. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. And if I say no? Renee nodded. Then you walk away with documented proof, full protection, and a settlement they won't survive publicly. I considered that. Then I shook my head. No, I said. I don't want to walk away. Renee watched me closely. Why? Because they didn't do this by accident, I said. And if I leave, they'll do it again. Just cleaner. Her gaze held mine. That's the right answer, she said quietly. We walked back onto the floor together. The office didn't look the same. People weren't typing. They were watching. Not me. Her. Renee didn't slow down. Attention, she said calmly. All personnel. Please step away from your systems. Chairs scraped. Screens dimmed. No one argued. Evelyn appeared in her doorway, face tight, smile brittle. This is highly irregular, she said. Renee didn't look at her. This is an internal board matter, she replied. Your involvement has concluded. You don't have authority. Renee turned then. Slowly. Deliberately. I do, she said. And so does the person you just tried to silence. She looked at me. Mora, she said, loud enough for the room to hear. Your termination is void. Effective immediately. The air shifted. Evelyn inhaled sharply. This is retaliation, Evelyn snapped. She's being dramatic. Stop, Renee said. Just that. Stop. And Evelyn did. Renee continued. You approved a forged compliance certification. You removed the only person who documented it. You attempted to bury the trail. Evelyn's voice dropped. You're overstepping. Renee lifted her phone again and angled it just enough for Evelyn to see the name on the screen. Silence. Then computers chimed across the floor. Emergency board session. Immediate attendance. Evelyn's face drained of color. I didn't move. For the first time all day, I didn't have to. An hour later, the room felt different. Settled. Not safe. Accountable. Evelyn's chair was empty. Renee stood beside me as documents were slid across the table. Your terms, she said. I didn't hesitate. Final authority on compliance sign-offs, I said. No overrides. She nodded. Done. Direct reporting to the board. Done. Written acknowledgement that my removal was retaliation. She glanced at HR. Documented. And protection, I finished. Explicit. Binding. Renee met my eyes. Non-negotiable, she said. Harriet Cole, the board chair, leaned forward. All terms accepted. The silence that followed wasn't tense. It was final. I signed. Not because I was grateful. Because I was done being quiet. When I stood to leave, Renee stopped me. Most people would have walked away, she said quietly. I nodded. I thought about it. And I wouldn't have slept, I replied. She smiled faintly. By evening, the announcement went out. 3 sentences. Clinical. Evelyn Consincade's resignation. No thank you. No farewell. By morning, her access was gone. Quietly. The same way mine almost was. When I walked out that night, it was through the front doors. Badge clipped. Steps steady. They told me to leave for my own good. What they meant was, be quiet. I didn't. And that's why they lost control of the story. The office didn't explode after Evelyn left. That surprised everyone. There were no raised voices, no whispered celebrations, no sudden rush of courage. No one clapped. No one even smiled. The space didn't fill with relief. It emptied. Power doesn't fall loudly. It withdraws. By the next morning, Evelyn's name was already gone from the directory. Her calendar had vanished. Her access logs ended mid-sentence, like a thought someone chose not to finish. People noticed. They just didn't talk about it. When I walked in that morning, the security guard at the front desk stood a little straighter. Not respectful. Not afraid. Alert. Like he'd been given new instructions and didn't yet know how far they extended. I clipped my badge on and kept walking. The floor felt different under my feet. Not softer. Heavier. Like the building had absorbed what happened and was waiting to see what I'd do with it. At my desk, nothing had been touched. My monitor, my keyboard, the notebook I'd taped shut the day before, still exactly where I'd left them. Except now, they weren't mine in the same way. Now, they were symbols. People glanced up as I passed. Quickly. Then back down. Like eye contact might be mistaken for allegiance. Leia looked at me longer than the others. Her face was pale, but her eyes were steady. "You're really still here," she said quietly. I nodded. "I am." She swallowed. "Good." That was all she said before returning to her screen. No one congratulated me. No one apologized. They didn't need to. Silence does the work faster. At 9:07 a.m., Renee's message appeared on my screen. Conference room. 10 minutes. Come alone. I didn't ask why. I didn't bring anything except the notebook. The conference room door closed behind me with the same soft click as the night before. Not dramatic. Just final enough to matter. Renee was already there, standing, not sitting, by the window. Harriet Cole sat at the head of the table, hands folded, posture composed in a way that suggested she didn't need to assert control because it already belonged to her. "Mara," Harriet said. "Sit." I did. Renee stayed standing. "Before we discuss next steps," Harriet continued, "I want to be clear about something." She met my eyes directly. What happened yesterday wasn't corrective. It was preventive. I nodded. "I understand. You were removed because you interrupted a process that relied on your silence," she said. "You weren't meant to be protected. You were meant to disappear." The words landed without cruelty, just accuracy. "And now?" I asked. "And now," Harriet said, "we decide whether this company learns from that, or simply survives it." Renee stepped forward. "Multiple departments are unsettled," she said. "People are nervous. Not because they cared about Evelyn, but because the rules they relied on shifted overnight." I leaned back slightly. Rules only feel stable when they protect the right people. Renee's mouth curved faintly. "Exactly," she said. "Which is why the next phase is the most dangerous." Harriet tilted her head. "Explain." "Power vacuums," Renee said, "don't stay empty. They attract movement." I felt it then, the subtle tightening in my chest. "Who?" I asked. Renee didn't answer immediately. "Everyone," she said finally. "People who stayed quiet. People who looked away. People who benefited indirectly and told themselves it wasn't their responsibility." I exhaled slowly. "So what's the plan?" I asked. Harriet's gaze didn't leave my face. "The plan," she said, "is to see whether you can hold authority without becoming what removed you." The room went quiet. That wasn't a compliment. That was a test. "I didn't ask for authority," I said. "No," Harriet agreed. "You asked for responsibility. Authority was the cost." Renee slid a folder across the table toward me. Inside were emails from the past 12 hours. Reactions. Internal messages. Carefully worded questions that weren't questions at all. Is compliance still a bottleneck? Will approvals be delayed under the new structure? Who should we escalate to now? Every one of them translated to the same thing. Are we still allowed to do what we were doing? "They're probing," Renee said. "Looking for the edges." "And if I don't respond?" I asked. "They'll decide for you," Harriet said. Quietly. I closed the folder. "Then we respond," I said. "Publicly. Clearly." Renee nodded once. "That's what I hoped you'd say." By noon, the announcement went out. Not flashy. Not emotional. Just precise. Effective immediately, all compliance certifications require final approval by Mara. No exceptions. No overrides. Any attempt to bypass this process will be documented and escalated to the board. That was it. No justification. No apology. No reassurance. The reaction was immediate and invisible. Meetings were postponed. Emails slowed. People hesitated in doorways like they weren't sure whether stepping into a conversation might be misinterpreted. I felt it in the way voices lowered when I passed. Not fear. Calculation. Power doesn't announce itself. It waits to be tested. The first test came at 2:13 p.m. An email from operations. Subject line neutral. Content polite. Just a heads up, we're on a tight deadline. Can you confirm whether you'll be flexible on the pending certification? I stared at the word flexible longer than I needed to. Then I replied with one sentence. No. Nothing else. No explanation. No softening language. I hit send. 3 minutes later, my phone rang. Unknown extension. I let it ring. 5 minutes after that, Renee stepped into my office without knocking. That was fast, she said. I didn't look up. They always move quickly when they think pressure will work. She leaned against the doorframe. You know what they're doing now, right? Yes, I said. They're telling themselves I'll fold once it becomes inconvenient. And will you? I met her eyes. No. Renee smiled. Not approving, not impressed. Relieved. Good, she said. Because the second phase starts now. I closed my laptop slowly. What's the second phase? I asked. Renee's expression shifted. Subtle. Serious. Isolation, she said. They'll try to make you feel alone without ever touching you. I felt a chill. How? I asked. She listed it calmly. Meetings you're not invited to. Decisions framed as already made. Allies quietly reassigned. Praise in public, resistance in private. I nodded. That already started. Of course it did, she said. You removed a shield. Now they're exposed. I leaned back in my chair. Then I won't play defense, I said. Renee's brow lifted slightly. What does that look like? It looks like documentation, I replied. And visibility. Her smile returned, this time sharp. That, she said, is how you turn pressure into leverage. By the end of the day, I felt it. The weight. Not exhaustion. Not fear. Responsibility. Every decision I made now changed someone else's risk. Every delay protected truth but cost time. Every refusal created friction. Power wasn't loud. It was heavy. As I packed up to leave, I noticed the box under my desk, the one I'd taped shut the day before. I slid it out and opened it. Inside were things I didn't need at work anymore. Old notes. Personal reminders. The version of myself that thought doing the right thing quietly was enough. I didn't throw it away. I sealed it again. Some things aren't meant to disappear. They're meant to remind you why silence was never an option. When I walked out that evening, people watched. Not openly. But enough. They weren't sure who I was yet. Neither was I. But I knew one thing with absolute clarity. They removed me because they thought I was alone. They were wrong. And tomorrow, they would start realizing just how wrong. Retaliation never announces itself. It doesn't arrive angry or loud or obvious. It doesn't slam doors or raise voices. That would be traceable. That would be evidence. Real retaliation arrives disguised as normal. By the third day, the office had adjusted just enough to pretend nothing had happened. People came in on time. Meetings resumed. Calendars filled. The machinery of work restarted with careful hands, Like everyone was afraid the system might still be fragile. It wasn't fragile. It was watching. I felt the first shift before I could name it. My calendar looked full, but important meetings were missing. Not cancelled, never cancelled. Simply held without me. Decisions reached and summarized afterward, framed as conclusions rather than discussions. Just keeping things moving, the follow-up email said. Movement without consent is control. I forwarded every one of those emails to a private folder Renee had set up for me. She didn't comment. She didn't need to. The second sign came in the form of kindness. People stopped by my desk more often. Compliments appeared where silence used to live. You handled that whole thing really well, someone said softly in the hallway. You must feel relieved, another offered, like relief was the point. Relief is what people feel when danger is over. This wasn't over. At 11:26 a.m., Leia knocked on my door. She didn't step in right away. She waited to be invited. That alone told me everything. Come in, I said. She closed the door behind her, slower than usual. They reassigned me, she said. I didn't ask who they were. Where? I asked. Different team, she replied. Same floor. New manager. Her voice was steady, but her hands weren't. Did they give a reason? I asked. She hesitated. They said it was about alignment. I nodded once. Alignment is what people call obedience when they don't want to say it out loud. Did you ask for it? I asked. No, she said quickly. I didn't even know until this morning. I leaned back in my chair. Did they say anything else? Leia swallowed. They asked if I felt pressured. By you. The words landed carefully, like they'd been rehearsed. I didn't react. What did you say? I asked. That you didn't pressure me, she said. That you asked questions. That's all. I studied her face. You understand why they asked, I said. Yes, she replied. They're trying to see who's loyal. I nodded. Not loyal. Predictable. She exhaled slowly. Am I in trouble? She asked. I met her eyes. No, I said. But you're being measured. She gave a small, humorless smile. So are you. Yes, I agreed. But they're running out of ways to do it quietly. After she left, I closed my door and opened the retaliation log. Renee had warned me this would happen. Isolation first. Reassignment second. Narrative pressure third. At 1:02 p.m., the narrative arrived. An email from operations, sent to a wide distribution list. Subject: Process Optimization Update. The language was clean. Professional. Neutral. Too neutral. It outlined a streamlined approval pathway for non-critical compliance items, designed to reduce bottlenecks. My name appeared once. At the bottom. Final oversight remains with compliance lead. No mention of authority. No mention of overrides. No mention of escalation. Just enough ambiguity to test the edges. I forwarded it to Renee. She responded with one line. Do nothing. Let them step closer to the edge. I waited. At 2:47 p.m., my phone rang. It wasn't an unknown number this time. It was internal. I answered. Mora, the voice said smoothly. Just wanted to make sure you saw the update. I did, I replied. Good, he said. We were hoping it would make things easier. For whom? I asked. A pause. Just long enough to recalibrate. For everyone, he said. I leaned back. Then you won't mind if I revise it, I said. Silence. Revise, he repeated. Yes, I said. To reflect the actual approval structure. Another pause. That might slow things down, he said carefully. Then they were moving too fast, I replied. He exhaled. We're all on the same side here, Mora. No, I said. We're not. The line went quiet. When he spoke again, the warmth was gone. We're just trying to protect the business. I smiled faintly. So am I said. That's why I won't let you bury risk under efficiency. I ended the call. Within minutes, Renee appeared in my doorway. That was bold, she said. Necessary, I replied. She nodded. They escalated. I felt it before she said the next words. HR requested a climate review, she continued. Anonymous. They're framing it as concern about management tone. I let out a slow breath. They're trying to paint me as difficult, I said. Yes, she agreed. Because difficult sounds less dangerous than right. I stood and walked to the window. So what's next? I asked. Renee crossed her arms. Next, she said, they'll test whether you flinch. How? By offering you an out, she replied. Something comfortable. Something tempting. The offer came the next morning. Harriet didn't deliver it. That would have been too direct. It came from a senior executive I'd barely interacted with before. He asked me to join him for coffee. Neutral ground. Public. Safe. I agreed. He arrived early. Smiled easily. Spoke about weather, traffic. Nothing. Then he leaned back and said it. You've been under a lot of pressure, he said. Anyone would be. I waited. There's an opportunity opening up, he continued. Advisory role. Strategic. Less operational exposure. Translation. Step sideways. You'd still have influence, he added quickly. Just without the daily friction. I looked at him. Who suggested this? I asked. He smiled. It came up organically. I nodded. Then let me answer organically, I said. No. His smile tightened. Think about it, he said. Power doesn't need proximity to be effective. I met his gaze. Power without accountability is decoration, I said. His expression hardened. I'm trying to help you, he said. No, I replied calmly. You're trying to make me quieter. We finished our coffee in silence. When I returned to the office, Renee was waiting. They offered you a soft exit, she said. Yes, I replied. I declined. She exhaled. Good. That means they're out of options that don't leave fingerprints. That afternoon, the tone shifted. Emails grew sharper. Requests came framed as emergencies. People stopped pretending they weren't watching. At 4:18 p.m., I received a message from an address I didn't recognize. You're making this harder than it needs to be. No signature. I stared at the screen. Then I forwarded it to Renee. She responded immediately. Save it. Don't reply. This is the crack. I closed my laptop and leaned back. The room felt tense, not hostile, but charged. Like something had been set in motion and couldn't be stopped now. They weren't trying to remove me anymore. They were trying to outlast me. They thought time would soften me. They were wrong. Because time doesn't weaken conviction. It reveals who was pretending to have it. As I packed up to leave, I noticed something new. People weren't avoiding my eyes anymore. They were studying me, trying to decide which version of me would survive. The compliant one they could manage, or the one who didn't flinch. I already knew the answer. And soon. So would they. Power doesn't ask permission before it changes you. It waits. It watches how you respond when there's no rule telling you what's right. Only consequences reminding you what's convenient. By the end of the first week, I understood something no one had warned me about. Winning didn't feel like victory. It felt like exposure. Every decision I made now created ripples. Not dramatic ones. Subtle, persistent waves that altered how people moved around me. Conversations stopped when I entered rooms. Emails arrived pre-edited, pre-justified, stripped of anything that might look like doubt. Not because they trusted me. Because they feared uncertainty more than authority. Renee called it pressure normalization. I called it exhausting. The real test didn't arrive as a confrontation. It came disguised as responsibility. On Monday morning, Harriet summoned me to her office. No urgency in the message. No explanation. Just a time. When I entered, she didn't look up right away. She was reading something on her tablet. Slowly, carefully, like she wanted to finish before acknowledging me. Sit, she said finally. I did. You've stabilized compliance, she said. Faster than expected. That wasn't the goal, I replied. No, she agreed. But it was the outcome. She set the tablet down and folded her hands. There's an issue, she continued. One that predates you, but now sits squarely in your lane. I waited. A legacy contract, she said. High value. Long-standing partner. The certification was rushed 2 years ago. My stomach tightened. Rushed how? I asked. Harriet's gaze didn't waver. Incomplete documentation. Assumptions accepted as facts. Risks noted, then overridden. I leaned back slowly. And now? I asked. And now, she said, external scrutiny is increasing. Nothing formal yet, but enough that we need to decide how much truth we can afford. The phrase hit me harder than she probably intended. How much truth we can afford, I repeated. She didn't correct it. We can amend the record quietly, she said. Retroactively complete the documentation. Close the gaps. I felt the familiar tightening in my chest. Or? I asked. Or we disclose, she replied. Which triggers review? Which risks exposure? Which could cost the company more than the issue itself? I looked at her. And you want my recommendation, I said. I want your judgment, she replied. That's why you're here. There it was. The moment. Not illegal this time. Not forged. Not blatant. Just flexible. I need to see the file, I said. Harriet nodded. You'll have it by noon. When the file arrived, I closed my door and read every page. I didn't rush. Because rushing is how this starts. The pattern was familiar. Small omissions. Language that implied certainty where there was none. Approvals stacked on top of each other until responsibility blurred. No single villain. Just a system that rewarded speed and punished hesitation. By 2 p.m., Renee was standing in my doorway. You look like someone weighing something heavy, she said. I am, I replied. She stepped inside and closed the door. They want a recommendation, I said. One that lets them fix the past without admitting it happened. Renee nodded. That's common. And dangerous, I added. Yes, she agreed. But also survivable. For the company. I met her eyes. And for me. She didn't answer immediately. For you, she said carefully, it depends on how much of yourself you're willing to trade for stability. That landed. I didn't come back to be quieter, I said. No, she agreed. But you did come back into a system that will keep testing whether you mean that. I closed the file. If I recommend disclosure, I said, they'll say I'm reckless. Yes. If I recommend amendment, I continued, they'll say I'm practical. Yes. And either way, I finished, they'll learn something about what I'm willing to do. Renee smiled faintly. Now you're thinking like someone in power. That wasn't comfort. That was warning. The pressure didn't stay contained. By Wednesday, the whispers had started. She's too rigid. She doesn't understand business realities. She's technically right, but did more work than any accusation. Leah stopped by my office again that afternoon. They're asking questions, she said quietly. About what? I asked. About you, she replied. Whether you're sustainable. I leaned back. And what do you say? She hesitated. That you're consistent. I smiled faintly. They don't like that, I said. No, she agreed. They like predictable people, not principled ones. That night, I stayed late. Not because I had to. Because I needed to think without noise. The office after dark feels honest. Stripped of performance. Just desks and screens and the faint hum of systems running whether people are there or not. I opened the legacy file again. Then I opened my own notes, the ones I'd kept from the beginning. The ones that had nearly cost me everything. The pattern was clear. Every major failure started with a compromise someone convinced themselves was temporary. Just this once. Just to keep things moving. We'll fix it later. Later never comes. At 9:47 p.m., my phone buzzed. Renee. You don't have to decide tonight. I stared at the message. Then I typed back. I do. If I wait, the decision will be made for me. 3 dots appeared. Then. What are you thinking? I looked around the empty office. At the version of myself that used to sit here quietly, trusting process. At the box under my desk I still hadn't unpacked. Then I replied. I'm thinking that power only matters if it stops harm, not just absorbs it. There was a long pause. Finally. That choice will cost you. I typed one word. I know. The next morning, I sent my recommendation. Clear. Direct. Documented. We disclose. We correct the record publicly. We accept the review. And we stop pretending the cost of truth is higher than the cost of hiding it. The reaction was immediate. Harriet called me within minutes. You understand what this triggers, she said. Yes, I replied. This will reopen scrutiny, she continued. It will invite questions about other decisions. Yes. And it will put a target on you, she added. I paused. Harriet, I said calmly, there's already a target on me. The only difference is whether I pretend not to see it. Silence. Then she spoke again, slower this time. You're forcing the issue, she said. No, I corrected. I'm refusing to delay it. She exhaled. We'll proceed, she said. But understand this. Once this door opens, there's no closing it. I looked at the file one last time. Good, I said. It shouldn't have been closed. When the announcement went out, the office didn't erupt. But something shifted. People stopped whispering. Because now, the conflict wasn't abstract. It was real. External review. Public accountability. Consequences. Some people would be exposed. Others protected. And everyone would be watching how I stood when the ground moved. I returned to my desk and opened my laptop. For the first time since this began, my hands weren't shaking. Not because I was confident. Because I was aligned. Power will always ask for a price. That day, I decided what I would never pay. The review didn't destroy the company. That surprised them. It didn't make headlines. It didn't trigger panic. It didn't collapse systems or empty offices. What it did was worse. It made everything visible. Processes were rewritten. Authority was clarified. Language that once hid responsibility was stripped down to meaning. Some people resigned before questions reached them. Others stayed and learned, quietly, that survival now required honesty, not alignment. Evelyn was never mentioned again. Not because she didn't matter. Because once power moves on, it doesn't look back. A month later, the office felt lighter. Not happier, just cleaner. People spoke more carefully. Decisions slowed, but they held. Risk stopped being something passed downward. One afternoon, Leah stood in my doorway again. They're using your framework company-wide, she said. I nodded. Good. You could have left, she added. Most people would have. I closed my laptop. Leaving would have been easier, I said. Living with myself mattered more. She smiled once and walked away. That evening, I packed the box under my desk. Not because I was leaving. Because I didn't need it there anymore. When I walked out, no one stopped me. No one watched. No one needed to. Power doesn't need witnesses once it's earned. They told me to leave for my own good. What they meant was, be quiet, be flexible, don't ask questions. I didn't listen. And that's the thing about silence. Once you stop accepting it, it never has control over you again. The end.